This meeting is now being recorded.
Jolene, just doing a quick sound check. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. And you can see my screen?
Yes.
Love it when both those things work. Well, welcome everybody. A couple housekeeping things before we get going. First, this is the last of a three-part series we have done. Two other ones we have done have been on email management and work-life balance, and those recordings are available. And so this one is on task management. If you have not received the handouts, if you go at the very top of the global meet, you're going to see an icon up there that says File Library. And if you click on that, Jolene and Sarah have uploaded the handouts there that you can download. And when you download them, you're going to see the slide at the top, which I'm going to be going, and then there'll be some notes at the bottom from some talking points that I'll be talking through. So you can add to those and have that as a reference for you. As Jolene said, we are recording this, so that's just FYI for everybody. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start the presentation. How I usually like to do it is using the chat. If you have questions along the way, feel free to put them in. And then I'll stop at the end just before the top of the hour, and we'll open it up for questions for them as well. Now, let's get used to the chat here. I just want to get a sense of who's out there. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, just chat in what city, state you're calling from. And then if you'll just let me also know if you have attended one of the prior webinars I've done, either the email or the work-life balance. Just let me know that. That would be great. Wonderful. Okay, you East Coasters, I'm really sorry about the snow thing. I'm sitting in Boulder, Colorado with 70-degree weather. So I'm sorry. We'll get all weather too, though. That's just what it is. Wonderful. Okay, so good. So a lot of you attended one or both. Wonderful, wonderful. So we are building on the majority of you. Great. Now, second question I have for you, let me know if you are primarily a Google or an Outlook user or both. Some of you might use Outlook for work and Google for personal. So just let me know if you're Outlook or Google. Yes, Outlook is the dominant force here, and Google for personal, good. Not good, Google for personal. Tracy, good, both. Good. Yeah, that's usually, a lot of you who are like Outlook for work and Google for personal is it's more common right now, so that's great. That helps me, Garrett. So as we go along today, very similar to the other webinars I've done, I'm going to focus a lot on Outlook functionality just because it is the primary, but I will show you Google users, some other ones, and we'll talk about a couple other applications that I find useful too as it relates to task management. And with that, let's get going on our topic here. One other thing before I go there, technical issues. If you're having any technical issues, sound, can't see the screen or anything, just chat that in. Sarah and Jolene will be monitoring this, and they'll be able to help you with the tech challenges as we go along. Okay, let's talk about task management, shall we? So, tasks. So I hear every day, KJ, I have a lot to do. And the reality is we all have a lot to do. And so it is gone the world of coming to work and thinking, what will I do today? Now is the world where you come on Monday morning and you think, holy shimolies, what am I going to start with, right? That's more the question in your head. And what we want with task management is a way and a system to help manage tasks. So with that, my first question to you is why would it be beneficial for you to have a system to manage things you need to do? What is it going to do to help you? Because I've had people say, well, I put it down, but it doesn't really help me. But why would it help you if you had it? Tracy, yeah, great, staying on top of things. Yes, Susan, prioritizing, big one, right, if you wrote it down. Not missing deadlines. Heather, a good one, yep. Vince, keeping focus, right, because there's so many things you can do, right? What do you deal with in helping you there? Yeah. Definitely the forget factor, Patty, yep, because there's just so many of them, right? How do you remember everything? And then Marie, yes, love that one, long-term projects. So nothing you need to do right now, but you need to track the future stuff. Yes. All really good things to track them. And so I am a fan in today's world. You have to have some methodology of tracking tasks. Gone is the day that we can keep it all in our head. We just can't do it. There's too many and there's too much. And how do we know what to do first? And so you have hit all the reasons why we need to do it. Now, the barriers for some people, how to do that easily and efficiently, and depending on the context of your job, you know, how much do you need? And so no one really wants to track things, but we have to have some sort of methodology. So what I want to share with you today is a little bit about some best practices of managing task lists, along with some ideas, again, of how to do it in Outlook, in Google, some options for that. I am a big, big fan of Outlook task lists, and I'll be telling you why because of that. But it does offer a lot of functionality. But I find that Outlook tasks is usually the biggest component most people don't use, and they don't use it because they just don't know what it does. Or they started to use it and they didn't know how to see things or view things, and it became this long list and overwhelming, and they weren't sure how to manage it. So I've seen a lot of people try to use Outlook Task and weren't successful, and I've seen a lot of people who just didn't know what it was. But hopefully after this webinar you can see kind of the value of it and how you can use it. And so I want to take you through that. So before we get to that, first I want to talk a little bit about priorities. And so everyone says, I need to start with my priorities, and that's great. But the question is, how in the heck do we know what a priority is? What information of the task tells you it's a priority? So check that information. How do you know it's a priority? What information do you have that tells you it's a priority? Tracy, great, yeah. Deadlines, right? The due date. Definitely, you know, if it's due today, there's some sort of priority to it. Sarah, love it. Who's asking for it? The who factor, right? So could it have more value if it's your boss versus maybe the CEO versus just a colleague? Right, there is some who and context to that, right? Time sensitiveness, Katie, yep. Who requests in, who it goes to, right? Again, the who factor. Katie, amount of people it looks like, interesting, yeah. There's probably, it depends on if that's a priority now, right? And I think where you're going is if I know I'm holding a whole bunch group of people up on their job, it might be more of a priority even though it's not a due date. So that's an interesting context. Good. So you're hitting definitely the when factor, the who factor, and then there's the context factor, right? And so what we want is we want a task list that ideally can help us sort that information so that we can understand and see our priorities quickly. And what happens is when we use, I'm going to say, a method where we can't really quickly see maybe a who or a when or the context, it's harder for us to quickly wrap our head around what the priorities are. And so part of what we want a good task list to do is to help us be able to sort through that different criteria so we can see it easily. Okay, so what type of tasks should we track, okay? So this is another barrier for people using task lists, because do I write down absolutely everything I need to do, or do I write down only some things? And I'm going to say it depends. I like to think of tasks as immediate versus future. Okay? Future tasks to me should always be tracked somehow because there's nothing I need to do now, but next week I got to start preparing for the next webinar I'm doing, right? But I don't need to worry about it today. I need to worry about it next week. So that's a perfect example of something that I would track in a task list. Anything that I don't need to do now, but I need to do it in the future, and I want to be able to sort of track. Now, immediate things to me are things like I wake up this morning and I think, I better call Jolene and ask her this quick question before we get on the webinar, right? I didn't know that prior, I just knew that at this instant moment, and that's something quick that's happening today. Could you track that? You could. Some people then use those immediate tasks for really paper. Some people use their task system for it. That kind of gets into preference. And some people kind of use Post-it notes for immediate. So I think immediate tasks, you could use your task system, you could use Post-it notes, you could use paper, you could use kind of your calendar. You know, you want something that's visual for you so you don't forget. So that to me is immediate stuff. And then I think of really managing task lists, really everything I don't need to do absolutely this moment, but I need to do in the future that I want to track somehow. The other thing in terms of tracking are things that are going to take a long time to do. So let's say I wake up this morning and I think, you know what, I really got to work on that report. And I know it's going to take me a couple hours. That might be something that I want to hold on my calendar in terms of time to block it. And I'm going to show you how to maybe do that too. But in terms of what do we track, mostly I say we need to track anything you don't need to do today, but you need to do in the future. And that really becomes that task list. Now, of course, there's going to be things on your task list that you tagged for today, right? So you're going to be able to see those too. So task list options. Now, those of you that have Outlook, that is one option. Those of you who have Google, that is another option. There are other third-party tools, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that also are more robust task list managers. Those can be used, I think, a lot for sharing projects with other groups and things like that. Some of you might have a day planner, like kind of that traditional day planner and tracking tasks in there. That can work too. My only biggest challenge with day planners right now is I think day planners are great for like immediate tasks, meaning again those things that I wake up and I think, oh, quickly I need to do that, or I got to remember to call Mary or call Tracy. But I don't find them very effective for ongoing projects and tasks at this time because it only goes in, it's a very stagnant format. I mean, I have to write it on that date or that page, and I can't manipulate it very well or easily once I've written it down. So that's my only thing with tablets. Now, some of you, again, are also writing things just on a straight notepad. Nothing wrong about that, again, but it's hard to prioritize. I don't usually put the date on that. I don't really have a way to categorize it. And so, again, you limit some functionality that you could have if you use electronic task lists. So not to say those ways are bad, and I would always advocate that if it works for you and you're getting everything done, then use paper. But if it's not working for you, and you find it's becoming a long, long list and it's not working for you, I think the electronic might be an option too. Okay, so I'm going to switch into Outlook, and I want to walk you through some of the task list functionality here. And let me go back to Mail for a minute. Okay, I'm in my own sample profile here. Okay, so I'm in the Mail view. Now you're seeing my Outlook, which is actually the 2013 version. And some of you are on the 2010 version. There's not a big difference. The only really big difference you're going to see, there's minor differences between the two, but the only really visual one you're going to see is the Mail, the calendar, the people, and the tasks, the folders. The words are written out below here in this bottom left corner, and you see icons. So that's kind of like the biggest difference visually you're going to see. Other than that, everything I'm showing you is available in 2010 as well as 7. So those of you on prior versions, this is the only part that looks a little different down in the corner here. Okay. So down in, you either have an icon or you have the word that says task, but when I click on that, just when I click on the mail or the calendar, it opens into the task window, okay? And so on the left column here, very similar to email, is going to show you all your task folders, meaning if you created a separate folder for tasks, it's different than email folders, you're going to see them located here. I'm going to come back to how to create task folders in a minute, but just know that that's seeing it. Also, if you have multiple profiles, let me go back to the mail view. So as you can see, KJ, which all of you will have at the very top, is your primary profile. I also have other profiles in terms of archiving email, as well as this profile that I call my sample profile for training. So when I'm in tasks, very likely you're going to see this task list here, and it says my name. That's associated with my primary profile. You see the task list right underneath it. It says sample profile. That task list is associated with my sample profile. So if you have multiple profiles, you'll also see multiple task folders because there's a task folder associated with each profile. Now, in this main area is where you see your task list, and there's views, okay? And up at the top here, under this current view, this is where most people have been in a view called Simple List. That's the default view. In the Simple List, it shows everything that's, that you have done and haven't done. And I find most people didn't know how to change that view, so they started seeing all their completed with everything they have to do in the future, and it messed them up. This is where you want to take that arrow and go down, and I usually like being in the active view. The active view is showing you everything in your task list you have not completed. If you've completed it, it's going to go to the completed view, okay? So that's the difference, active versus completed. You're also going to have a view down, if you click the arrow again down, which I like is the next 7 days, which only shows me the next week, and I'll also see overdue, meaning things I haven't gotten done, okay? And you can also see it today. So part of using Outlook is making sure that you're connected on the right view that you want to help you. Okay, let me show you entering a new task and how I use this. So I'm going to open one that I've already done. But if I want to start a new task, very similar to email, I go up to this very upper left-hand corner and click on New Task. That opens a new task window very similar to email and calendar. Now again, I'm going to open one that I've already populated to show you some use. Okay, so this is just showing what you could populate. Now, I'm going to show you Google users, and if you were in another task list system, most task lists operate very similarly. There's some nuances in terms of functionality, but most will have very similar functions that I'm showing. So don't get, you know, we're definitely showing Outlook, but if you did have another system, it's going to operate similarly. Okay, subject line. Definitely putting in the subject line what you need to do. Now, a couple key tips on that. First, I like with that first word to be what verb you need to do versus just a noun. Some people just put quarterly staff meeting, but they don't put the verb of what they need to do. Sounds like a small thing, but the studies are showing me that when you put the verb of what you need to do, your mind wraps around it more. Call, write, email, plan, develop, you know, those kinds of words trigger you at the moment you're seeing it and help you wrap your head around it quicker than if you don't. Second thing I like to do is in parentheses, if a task is going to take me longer than an hour, I put in parentheses that time. What it does is it helps me when I'm getting to that week or that area of time, helps me to plan which tasks are going to take me a long time that I need to plan in for. I'm going to show you what that can look like with your calendar. Now, in Outlook tasks, you have a start and a due date. Could be the same date, could be two different dates, kind of up to you. The key thing is your views. You can view things by start date and you can view things by due date. You just have to be mindful of what you want to see. Now, the status, priority, and percent complete, I usually advocate for most users just to keep it the default settings, which is really not started, normal, and percent. I find that they're not as useful fields, and you say, well, priority, why wouldn't that be useful? Because it really says normal, high, and low. And just as we talked about what makes a priority, it's really off a due date. So priority really is more date or who, not necessarily if you see something low, normal, or high. And what I find is if you put everything high, that doesn't help you. It basically overwhelms you. So really you need to go off date is really more the trigger for most people on priority, okay? If it helps you to do percent complete, by all means, put it in, but don't have to. Now, this space down in the bottom is what I think is a golden area for tasks, and I want to walk you through what you could use it for. The first thing I can use it for is I can attach email items. So if I go up to the top and click on the ribbon bar that says Insert, and I go to this second icon here that says Outlook Item, this will open essentially my email box. So essentially I can take an email either from my inbox or from any folder that I have under here and from any profile. So let's say I want to go to my sample profile and I want to go to that email box, I can do that too. I click on the email, it's going to show as an attachment, and I'm going to click OK. Once this is attached, it's attached, so I can double open it, and there's the email. What's nice about this is some of you have tasks, and there's multiple emails that are related to that task, but you don't need those emails right now. You need those emails when you're going to do the task. So this gives you a way to kind of hold those emails in one location, getting ready for the task. So this is one way that I find very useful is attaching email. The second thing I find useful with task management is tracking what's been done. I'm finding there's a lot of wasted time when you get to a task and you're figuring out where you left off, what was said, what was done, what do you need to start with. And so if you just tracked a very brief note of something, of where you were on something, it will help you go and get faster into it and know where to pick up. And I find people are procrastinating things not because they really want to procrastinate, it's just because they don't even know. They have to it's going to spend too much time figuring out the last email or the last correspondence to figure out where they need to let off. So this is where you just write a very short note for yourself. And usually I put the date here, so let's say 1/26, and let's say I called Jolene and left a message. That at least lets me know that what action I took. The next thing you can do is break tasks down in this text space. So let's say you have this, which is plan the next quarterly staff meeting, and there's a few steps to this. Well, I could make a task for each step. That's option A. But option B is I kind of make a task for one of these, and then I break down the things I need to do within the task. You can do it with kind of bullets, or the other thing I can do in Outlook is I can add in a table. So if I click here, you're seeing my sample in here, and I click up here under the Insert Table, I can insert a table. Once I insert that table, and that table is there, then see how my formatting options come up under this Design tab, and I can make it as pretty and colorful, and all of you guys who love colors, you can just, have at it. So this sample that you see here, and if I don't want, I'm just clicking on it, deleting it. You can see next action. So create agenda, when the due date is, and then I can write my own notes for that specific task. So it's another way to kind of track, in more linear format of the subtasks you need to do. And then the last thing I can add is more additional information into this task. Do you have to do all of that? No. But for some tasks, there's context to that. And so I often find with most tasks there's some sort of notes or other information that would be helpful to remind you to do or remember that if you put it all connected with the task, you don't have to go hunt for it. It's all right there. The other thing I can do with Outlook is I have a category methodology. So in Outlook, there are categories. And with categories, and I'm going to go to my all categories here, my convention has been, because there's one category list for all of Outlook, my convention has been that I always will name categories what function I'm using them for and then put the name of the category. For example, these are all my calendar categories, right? And then you see my contact categories and then my task categories. Now, task categories can also help you organize your tasks to see them in a group. Now, remember we talked about priorities and we talked how do I know it's a priority? And some of you said it's the who factor, right? So this is where you could tag certain tasks from the who factor. So I could create a task category that's Bob. Maybe Bob is my boss. And I want to see everything that Bob asks me to do because he's my boss and there's going to be higher priority with it. Bob may not be my boss, but Bob may also be my direct report. So I'm delegating to Bob, and I got to make sure Bob does everything I ask him to do. So there's another way that I might put the task in. I've delegated it to Bob. I categorize it, Bob, and then I can see everything that Bob does. That's another way. You can also do it by topic. See how I have marketing, personal, PR? You can do it by topic. And you can also do it by type of activity, meaning phone calls or databasing or writing. So if you have certain chunks of activities that you want to see together because you're going to do them all at one time, like phone calls, you can do that too. I can have one task be more than one category. So it can be associated with two if you want. Okay? You create the category under New, create whatever category you want. You can assign a color. Once you're done, you're going to click OK. Your categories are here, and then you just check mark them, and then I click OK. And that's right under here where I can categorize, and you just go to all categories, and you choose the ones that you want. Okay? Save and close, and then your task is right there. Now, let's say I have a task that's reoccurring, meaning every week I need to plan the agenda for the staff meeting. You could do a recurring just like you have in your calendar function, and I can do that too. So you do have that as well. Okay? Okay. Tracy, I'm going to hit your question. When I attach an email, does it delete from my inbox? No. So when you attach it and it goes to the task, it's a copy of it. It's still in your inbox. So then in your inbox, you can either choose to file it or delete it. Now let's go to the delete part. If you delete it, it moves to the recycle bin. As long as that email's in the recycle bin, you will be able to access it. If it's deleted from the recycle bin, sometimes then you won't have access to it. And that is kind of inconsistent with this new version of 2013. Sometimes I delete it from the recycle bin, it goes away, and sometimes when I delete it, it stays. So I'm finding some version issues. But let's just be safe to say, if you delete it from the recycle bin, it will sometimes not be accessible. Okay, so we have our tasks. We've added them in. And so now let's talk about viewing tasks. And before we get there, here's what I want to do. I'm going to jump to Google users. And I want to show you something. Google users, in terms of entering tasks, let me show you what you have. In your Gmail calendar, okay, right under your calendars, you're going to see this task. Okay, everybody has it. If it's unhighlighted, meaning I don't see the color there, then tasks is not activated. If I click on it, then I see the color, then tasks is activated, okay, meaning I can see it on my calendar. If you click in the drop-down, I can change the color so it can be whatever color, you like. Once I have tasks there, then the task list will show up here on the right, okay? Right here, this plus sign, pretty easy, you can add a task. And when I add a task, let's say we're going to call Tracy, right, say hello. Once I add it in, I've just typed in, and this arrow pops up. I'm going to click on that arrow. This gives me the option to add a date. If I add the date, it's going to show up on my calendar. If I don't add a date, it won't show up on my calendar. So I'm a pretty big fan with Google users to add a date in there, okay? Now you have this notes field here, basic text, so I don't have some of the capabilities that I have with Outlook in terms of doing tables and things, but I can still add notes there, okay? And then I'm going to go back to list. So then once I have it in there, you can see it shows up on your calendar at the very, very top. Okay, going back to Outlook. Okay. And come back to that. Okay, let's talk about viewing tasks in Outlook. So you get all your tasks in, and then part of getting tasks done in an electronic format is being able to see them. If you can't see them, you won't do them. And so the views are really, really, really important in Outlook. So in this task window is your first viewing point. I'm going to show you views in the task window. I'm going to show you viewing in the calendar window, and I'm going to show you viewing in the inbox. Okay? First viewing is under this to-do list. This to-do list will be a combination of any emails you flagged and your tasks. So remember we talked last week about flagging emails? Well, if you flag an email, it's going to show up in the to-do list. I'll see both the flags and the task list. If I just click in the task list here, I will only see the task list. So that's just one distinction in Outlook. Remember, when I'm in this task list, this current view, I can see active, completed. I have all these views, next 7 days, overdue, today. You have all these views that you can see tasks. In this view, I can definitely click, just like email, click in the start date and it'll sort by that. Click in the due date, it'll sort by that. Click in categories, it will sort by categories. So now I can see my task by the type of category, and then I can see that. For those of you who say, KJ, I like this, but I kind of want it in front of me in a paper view because that's how I'm used to it, great. This is where I say, organize it in Outlook and then print it out. So get the view you want. So let's say I want the active view by categories. And then I can go to File and I can go to Print. And I'm going to do Table Style. Okay, so Table Style. See how my printer view is coming? I have to just make sure that's the view I want. Okay, you can go to Print Options and change that, but then you can print that out. And then that can be a visual in front of you as well. Okay, so one view is your task window view. Second view that I like, the calendar view. Once you enter your tasks, you have a task bar at the very bottom of your calendar that's only under the work week and day view. Right over in the lower right-hand corner is this arrow, and I'm kind of moving my mouse over it. But if I click in this arrow, it will minimize the task bar, so then you can't see it. See how I see this little bar down here? But if I click in that arrow again, that will open the task bar, okay? Now, once this task bar is here, I can see on that day all the tasks I need to do. Now, see how it says right at the very top of this, Show Tasks on Start Date. If I right-click on there, it gives me the option to show them by due date. Now, see how some of those moved? If I right-click again, I say I want to see by start date. It changes it. So, again, you just have to be mindful what date you want to see if you're going to look it on your calendar. So now that it's in my calendar and I can see it, this is where I usually like to add things on Mondays because I'm not sure of what my calendar is going to look like that week. So now do you have to do that? No, this is just KJ's way because I just don't know necessarily what day I'm going to do something unless something's due on a particular date. But I might have a start date on Monday and then do a due date, let's say it's due on Friday, so that I can help myself. This is where it helps you with planning. So now I see my calendar. I know I'm busy on Tuesday. I know I'm busy on Thursday. I have a little space on Wednesday and some space on Friday. So now what I can do in Outlook is I have the ability to click and drag these tasks to the day I want to do them. So let's say I see this, I say, oh, this is just not priority. I can do that on Friday. I'm just clicking and dragging it to Friday and dropping it. Move to Friday. And then I see, oh, you know what, I got to do that today. So I think that, that's going to take me 2 hours. So I'm going to click, I'm going to drag it up to my calendar and drop. It's now going to make a copy. And now I'm going to open it, and then I'm going to plan 2 hours. So it's still in my task list. I just copied it and put it on my calendar so I could visually see it. That helps me remember that's time I want to allocate. And I think that, oh, I can do that tomorrow, nothing priority today. You know what, Joe can wait till Friday. Kimberly, I'm going to see her tomorrow. I'm going to put that there. And then this one, that doesn't need to happen until Wednesday. So this is where, once you have it, you can click and drag it either on that day of the task list or actually put it on your calendar, either one. Okay, let me stop, and just based on where we are now, any questions from you guys while I'm still in this view? Sometimes I usually get questions in terms of viewing this. And what I just did. So just checking in, making sure everybody's good on your end of what I've done. Now, some of you have used your calendar as a task list. Fine to do. Using the task list is another way. So up here at the top, I've done a sample task in my calendar. So this is actually a calendar appointment. And if you're going to use tasks in your calendar appointment, which you could certainly do, same type of thing, you can still put, your start and due date. I like to configure them all day because then when I do that, I see them at the top of my calendar, and then it's not taking up the time. But you can do the task list too. There's more functionality in the task list, but some of you who just feel like you're more comfortable in the calendar, not hurting that either. Then how do I delete multiple tasks all at once? Good question. So I usually, Vince, go to your task list, and then I get in this view, and if I highlight the top, and then I hold down the, I'm going to go to my sample profile. If I highlight the top, and I hold down the Shift key, I'm holding down the Shift key, and then I click, and then I'm highlighting all of them, and then I can right-click, and then I can just delete. Or you go up to the very top and delete. Either one, you can get you there. Okay, visual 2 is the calendar, okay? And so I like this for the task list because most people are in your calendar kind of seeing how you're going to go. Visual 3, mail. So in mail, you also have, under view, the to-do bar. So if I have the to-do bar, so under view, this to-do bar, and I'm going to put tasks, I could see a copy of my task list here. Now, again, those of you in 2010, you see a calendar view, your appointments, and the task list. It's, in 2010, I just get the option of seeing all if I want, okay? If you want to see everything, you can kind of see everything. But I'm just going to take those off just so we can see the task list. Now, once I have this task list, this is a mirror image. It's a mirror image. And this will be a combo task list. It'll be everything that's flagged via email and tasks. So it's both. It is a combo list, just like I showed you in the task list of the combo situation. So you're going to have both in there. So that's going to be very useful as well in terms of seeing them. So I find with Outlook, if you're going to use tasks, you just need to see what visual. Some of you are going to like all three. Some of you are going to like one more than the other, but you've got to get it visual in order to help you. Okay. With Google, let me go there real quick, your visual is on your calendar and your visual is on the task list. That's pretty much it with Google. Now, a couple other programs that are useful. If you're doing more projects, there's an app called Remember the Milk. Remember the Milk is a little bit more robust, cloud-based task management tool that will sync with Google. So if you can see down the bottom here, Remember the Milk is syncing, my account syncing with Google. So you Google users, if this task list is a little too simplified, you have more projects you want to do, I say get Remember the Milk because they sync together, okay? For those of you that want to share tasks, you're more in a team environment, Asana is a very good tool. NSPA uses it, a lot of people use it, and it's a very good tool from also a project management tool, especially if you're a Google user, it's hard to share tasks with other people. In Outlook, if you're on the Exchange server, I can share tasks, but Google, I can't. So Asana is another tool that I think is also very good from a project group standpoint. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Task apps, there's a couple other ones that I've mentioned that are a little bit more simplified to do, and this I prioritize. You'll see in your handout a little bit more information on them if you want to use them, as well as the links for Remember the Milk and Asana. Okay, managing tasks, let's go there. So once I get all these tasks in, managing them is the key. Now, one way of managing them, as I saw in the calendar, is you put them on that Monday and then you kind of move them to the day that you're going to do them. And then you start allocating time that you're going to do them. The other framework I say is when you're looking at your task list for this week, I have what I call my 4D decisions. My first D is delete. So I scan through my task list to go, what are things that I can take off my list? They're obsolete at this point. I don't need to deal with them anymore. They just got deleted themselves. I just haven't taken them off the list. So that's the first D. The second D is the delegate, meaning what things do I need others to help me with before I can move forward. So I can't do anything until I get the information from Tracy. I can't do anything until Vince lets me know and confirms with me on the number. And those then are emails that I need to follow up with those people, but I can't move forward on that task yet. So that's my second filter when I look at my task list. The third filter I look at is defer. What's not priority this week? And again, your criteria is due date, right, and who, and then there's context. But I look at the things that aren't priority and what things could be deferred to the following week that I don't need to deal with now. And right away, I'll take them and I'll move them to that following week, get them out of my view, which leaves me with my last D of things that I need to deal with. But I usually find if I do the filter of the delete, the delegate, and the defer, I've probably gotten rid of about a third of my task list just with those three things. And that's just context that happens, and you're not going to know that context until you get to that week for whatever reason. But I also find people don't do that filter, so they have a longer list they're dealing with. Shorten your list right away. Do that Monday morning. Shorten it so that you're only dealing with what you need to deal with. Okay, we talked about scheduling time for tasks. So in the Outlook environment, very easy to do. Google, you can do it too. You just create an appointment. You can put that task on there. It won't click and drag like the Outlook does. But I find with tasks that need over an hour, you've got to add time in your calendar for that. Otherwise, it doesn't really happen. So why do task lists fail? So here are the number one reasons I find when people start doing this that gets them, I'm going to just say it becomes an obstacle or challenge. We can work through it, but here's where I find people get stuck. First thing is you're so good, you put your task list in there, but your due dates become outdated, meaning you don't take the time to update them. So after week one, there's things you got done, there's things you didn't get done. It's important at the end of the week to go back to those things that you didn't get done and make a decision of when you're going to do them and change the date. It will take you less than 5 minutes, but when you don't do it and you go to this view, I'm going to go back to Outlook, and you see a view of a lot of things in red and outdated, your mind freezes. Your mind goes, oh my God, I have too much to do, overwhelmed, and then you stop using your task list, which kind of defeats the whole purpose. So don't get in that mode. Take time, change the day. If your task list gets too long and overwhelming, another reason that you get stuck and you say, oh, stupid task list, I'm just going to not use it. And this is where it should be long. But don't worry about it being long if you're putting things in date. You just have to worry about now and this week, and that's when you use your views. So you want everything out of your head. Get it out of your head. But not everything you need to do now. Just date it when you want it to remind you again. Okay? Next, keep it visual. That's why I spent time on the different views. Print it if you need to, but just make sure you print the view that you want. Maybe just print the weekly view versus an active view. Got to review it every week. Not clear on the action to take. So that's another barrier. If your mind can't wrap around in 2 seconds or less, or even 1 second or less, you won't do it. So you've got to be mindful to make sure that you're clear on what you need to do with that task. And then the final thing I find is, for whatever reason, that action is going to take longer than you have time. And so again, this is where you've got to be mindful of knowing which of those things are and then allocating time in your calendar for it. If you don't allocate time, you're right, it won't happen. Or you're going to do it on the weekends, which I know some of you are doing, and you don't want to do it then either. So just being mindful of that. So another barrier to doing tasks is focus. And I find that we always focus for different reasons. Sometimes it's cluttered desktop, sometimes it's emails popping up, sometimes you get lost in internet, phone calls, people talking loudly, noises, and sometimes it's just worry and stress. So I want you to chat in right now. What kinds of things get you off focus? Where do you tend to lose focus and then it takes you off of what you're doing? Just so I get an idea from you guys. Sarah, good, yes. Constant email. Phone calls, email, putting up fires, email, yep. Diana. And the crisis is, yep. Okay, definitely some of these. Okay, so let's talk about email for a minute. Definitely email is a distraction. And so if you want to, if you're working on a task, I'm going to encourage you to do two things. One, either take off your email notifications so you don't see the pop-up. Or B, are you ready for it? Close Outlook. Just close it. I do it a lot. Just close the program. And then get in the Word, the Excel, the PowerPoint, whatever document you're doing, and just get focused. So sometimes you just got to close the program. The other thing, I'm going to go back to Outlook. Under File, and I showed this last week, under Options, under Mail, and essentially midway, this message arrival, essentially default, all these are checked. You can take them all off. So if they're a distraction, take them all off, okay? So close out email when you really need to focus, open it back up is one option. Now, some of you said the phone calls. This gets into somewhat context of your job. Some of you are in the habit of every time the phone rings, you answer it, and there might be a context of your job that you need to answer it. And some of you might be able to let it go to voicemail and then call them back. That's going to be context, but if you're finding it's a big distraction because it's calling all the time and by the nature of your job, you might want to have some time that either you communicate to your colleagues or clients that's kind of, your phone time, that are good low phone time. So you're doing tasks at a lower phone time. I don't know. Either right before lunch or at the end of day or something like that, maybe kind of planning around that a little bit. The other thing I know is definitely processes. Things come up, you didn't plan on them, you have a great plan, you're going to do all these things, and then stuff happens. And that's life, right? We can't take that away. The thing is that when you get back to your desk after the crisis has happened, are you clear on what you need to do next? Because if you're not clear on what you need to do next, you will just go to email. And so that's the power. You're not going to always get it done. Yes, there will be distractions. The key is when you sit down to be able to go, you know what, I see this and this I got to do. Let me focus there before you do quickly email. So just be mindful of that. Okay, let's talk about meeting notes. So meeting notes, definitely you get tasks in them. Some of you are definitely using paper meeting notes. If you are, a couple tips. One, write the name and the date at the top of the page. Try to use one master notebook if you can. Do some sort of coding method, usually in the left margin, so that you can track easily things you need to do. And then, you know, how long you want to keep notes. Usually I say, if you're a manager or supervisor, usually you want to keep them longer, like about 1 year. But if you're not a manager or supervisor, then it's context, like how far back do you go back to meeting notes, depending on what you do. Now, the other program I'm a big fan of is OneNote. I'm going to bring it up. OneNote will sync with Outlook. OneNote is on almost all your computers. Very rare I don't see it. It's just many of you haven't used it yet. But essentially when you open it, you're going to have what's called notebooks. Notebooks is the first hierarchy. And once you're in a notebook, I'm in this general notebook, you're going to have these tabs up here, which are basically called sections. So each one of these sections could be a meeting. And then once I'm in that section, I can add a page, and I just date the top of the page and whatever meeting it is, and then I can take notes here. The nice thing about OneNote is when you have a task, I can highlight that task, and up at the very top, I can tag it as a to-do. Gives a little check mark here, and then I can go back and I can check it off, and that's a visual that I've done that. The other thing I can do is I can take a task, and I can go to Outlook, and I basically will connect with it. So I'm going to say, due today, puts a little flag here, and when I go to Outlook, and I go to my task list, see this test task from OneNote right here? Essentially copied it to Outlook, to my task list, and it put a link to that page in OneNote, which is really handy. So I have a lot of clients now who just love OneNote. They're taking all their meeting notes electronically. It's hugely helpful, and so that might be something you want to do. If you go to Microsoft, you just Google Microsoft Tutorial OneNote. Microsoft has an awesome, just quick video of taking you through a whole little tutorial of how to use OneNote, just kind of the quick and dirty basics that I don't have time right now to show you. But if you get in there, it's a good little tutorial and can walk you through. So this is another area where I see tasks get hidden, and if you're going to use Outlook, it's another way to take tasks and then get them incorporated in there. Evernote is also a meeting note tool. Really like it. It does connect with Outlook if your company will let it. Some companies don't. So in Outlook, if you see here, in this corner, I have my Outlook connected with Evernote because I don't have any blockages. Some companies do, some companies don't. It kind of depends on your company if you can get it connected. And then Google has a meeting note application called Google Keep. Pretty standard, just text-based, not a lot of functionality, but for you Google users, you know, it's an electronic way as well. Okay, so let's open it up to questions. Jolene, will you unmute everyone just to see if there's a verbal question? And if you have a question via chat, just let me know. We'll open it up. And those of you that don't have a question, I would encourage you right now to just take a minute and think about, based on what I talked about in this webinar, what do you want to incorporate?
All guests have been unmuted.
What two things would you, thank you, Jillian. You know, what 2 or 3 things that you would like to do? So let me start with any verbal questions. Okay, I'm not hearing any verbal. And Jolene, I'm hearing echo, so why don't you mute everyone again.
All guests have been muted.
Great, thanks, Jolene. Okay, so let's hit the chat. Yeah, it was a really bad echo on my side, so if you have a question, we won't do verbal, we'll just do chat. So Marie, can you share tasks with others who are working on a project? Yes. So here are your options. Option A, if you're going to be in an Outlook environment. If you're in an Outlook environment and you're on an Exchange server, you have a public, you can create a public task list. So that public task list would show up in your task list if you're given a user. And essentially, then you could share tasks like that. That's option A. The second option is if I have a task in Outlook, I could email this task. So essentially, you could forward this task and you could send it to somebody. It does have an assign task feature, but I don't really like it because once I assign it means I, KJ, will lose control of that task. I'll see it, but I can't manipulate it. So if I assign it to Jolene, then she has control of that task. I lose control, which I don't like. But you do have kind of that functionality. So either through a public task list or emailing, you can do it. If, in terms of if you're really doing a whole project together, this is where I say using some third-party app tools like Asana or Remember the Milk are a little bit more geared to sharing projects with one another. Tracy, can you set alerts on tasks? Yep, you sure can. So if I have a task, you will have a reminder function. And that reminder, just like in the calendar, I can set in terms of a date and a time, and it will go off. So you do have that function there, and you can take it off too. Tammy, I have Outlook 2007, and I don't see OneNote. Yes. So, Tammy, you're going to have to go, if you go to your program, so go to your program list and go to Microsoft Office, there's a chance with 2007 you didn't get OneNote. 2007, it wasn't automatic to get OneNote with the Office suite. Your company had to order it. So if you don't see it, then you may not have OneNote. That's A. If you do see it, then just open it. You may not have activated it. And if you didn't activate it, you may not see it with Outlook. But you can buy it separately, or I would just say if your organization just maybe see if they can upgrade to Outlook 2010 or 13, and then it's pretty standard with the suites now. Okay, yeah, if you see Evernote, then that's another option too. Very similar as a meeting note program, and so if that's working with you, I would say use Evernote then because it's a good program too. I like both. Good. We are at our time, and for some of you it is lunchtime, for some of you it is past. But thank you. Always appreciate your engagement and questions. I appreciate that. Hope you got some good tips from this. Again, this was recorded, and so if you want to listen to it again, you certainly can. Sarah is going to be sending out an evaluation by email shortly. That'll kind of be an evaluation for this one as well as the other two workshops I've done. We'd love to hear your feedback and anything we can do to improve these, we'd love to hear it. So if you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes to do that, we would sure appreciate it. On the front of my handout is my email. If you come up to something and you'd like to email me, please do. I'm happy to respond. And hopefully we'll see you all in future NSPA gatherings. And thank you so much. And we will hopefully see you soon. With that, Sarah, Jolene, I'll let you finish.
Okay, well, I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great Monday.